Hello and welcome to episode 6 of the MLS Fantasy Insider Podcast, our review of round 3 and preview of round 4. This episode is brought to you by beardcareclub.com, veteran-owned, zero outsourcing, buys locally, and based in Elsinore, Utah. Yeah, they really are RSL fans. If you don't want beard balms and oils to be greasy and you do want them to wash out with water at the end of the day, check out beardcareclub.com today. And don't forget, also check out their women's hair oil line and their Send of the Month program. That was fun. A real host. There we go.
I know. A real brought to you by.
It's cool, right? I know. Funny things.
I heard that they produce beard balm like RSL produces red cards. So it's a lot of great quality.
Prolifically and quality. So yeah, check out beardcareclub.com. Anyway,
look, I'm gonna find a way to get my brought to you by still in this, even if we have to actually bring it to you.
So that was Michael Denton. I'm your host, Reid Connolly from MLSFantasyBoss.com. And in addition to Mike tonight, we have Blayne Riffle with us who helped track down the beardcareclub.com guys. We were going to have our special guest that we talked about last week, Abby Lang from Burgundy Wave with us, but she got a little bit under the weather tonight, and so she will be joining us next month because we have Tim Shaw joining us next week. So Abby, sorry that you couldn't be with us tonight. Big shout out to all of the Colorado fans who watch. We've had some great representation from Burgundy Wave and Colorado in general early on the show. So we look forward to having Abby come on next month. But we're here to talk about this round 3 and round 4, guys. And round 3 was particularly special to me because I got to attend my first real in-person MLS game. And it was a doozy. I'll hit on that later because you don't want to hear about that. Everyone wants to hear about how our teams did. Maybe not mine, but you guys did pretty well. So Blayne, how'd your team do?
You hit it, Blayne.
Either one of you.
Yeah, 84 points for the round, and that's without Rooney and without Vela on my team. So I can't complain too much. I did drop a little bit in the overall rankings. I think 30 to 45 spots overall, but not terrible. I think I won every head-to-head this week, so I really can't complain that much. I think the big discrepancy in points was, did you have Rooney? Did you captain Rooney? Did you have Vela along with him? There were a lot of midfielders that hit this weekend. Few guys that were on the value game that we told you to watch out for. Daniel Royer put up a 13 and Michael Bradley put up an 11, which gave them both a 0.5 increase on this. Sean Davis went up and put out a 7. I did go for 2 of those, got himself a 0.3. Forwards, on the other hand, it was kind of a lackluster week unless you had one of the few mentioned names or not. Like, I think I got a whopping 12 points from a 3-forward set this week, so not too happy there. And of course, Saro just continued his rampage, 15 points with a goal and a clean sheet. I mean, that dude's just on fire right now.
Mike?
Yeah, about the same. I mean, I played with to try to be a focus on price increases, although I did switch to I dropped BWP and Kaku from my recommendations last week when Kaku was not starting, and picked up Royer and Joseph Martinez, and one of them worked and one of them didn't. But I was saved by my bench players with Saro and Moreno, both hitting big for me, which pretty much saved my week. I ended up with 86. I won them all my head-to-heads, and I had a pretty good price increase. I don't remember what it is overall, but I think I got almost 0.5 on pretty much everyone I had targeted. So no complaints there. Got my price wise, rose up in the rankings. 1690 overall, which is not good, but considering where I started this year, I will take it for this week.
I've actually had probably my worst start in the past 3 or 4 years, but I don't care at all. This week, because this week was super fun for me. We had the poll that went out, and the listeners of this podcast, so you guys listening right now, voted that you wanted me to go heavy on FC Cincinnati, and I did that. I took 3 players from FC Cincinnati on my team. I did Richie, I did Safe, and I did Adi, and Kenny did not play. So that was I was a little surprised after he came on and did so well with the attack last week, but I can understand how they would want to be more conservative against Portland, expecting them to come out big. And then whenever the tides turned, why you would just not change, because why change a good thing? Audie left early with an injury at the end of the first half, and Kenny did put up, or not Kenny, Richie did put up 9 points, who actually outscored my main keeper, Stefan, who got 8, but pretty solid points right there.
Richie was the best keeper in the round.
He was. It was fantastic. So I mean, I think that, and he had some great saves. That I was 13th row from the field, so it was pretty awesome to see some of those saves that he was able to put out there. My only 2 players who really did anything for me were Saro and Acosta. Everybody else, well, I also had Gressel, and he was okay. Everybody else just did not perform like I had hoped they would. Toronto giving up some of those goals made De Leon not come out for me. Robinson got 5, so that's fine for me with a defender. When I saw the Kaku wasn't playing, I reshuffled things, and I was like, Velo, Royer, and I did not go with Royer, and so that was a disappointment for me as well. So I went with the wrong New York Red Bull, and then my bench didn't do great for me. Hollingshead came up with the 3 points. But I did like you, Mike. I was trying to find a middle point between value gains and some success, and I thought some of these players could do a little bit better. I thought there'd be more clean sheets than we ended up having. I had a substantial value gain, so I'm hoping to put that to work for me in this short week that we have coming up. So yeah, I didn't do very well, but FC Cincinnati beat Portland 3-0, and I don't care. I don't care at all. So that's how we did for round 3. Hope you guys listening were doing better with the advice that you've been hearing from us and from participating in the Discord chat over at MLSFantasyBoss.com and over at r/FantasyMLS. Do a quick review of how the Experts League is going. Mike, you won handily over Mito from Fantasy Football 24/7, 86-68. Flip that score around. I got stomped by Matt Doyle, 61-96. So Doyle came to play. And again, I don't care. Jason beat Bobby Warshaw 99-90. That was a pretty tight game. Good, congrats, Jason. And congrats to Bobby for having maxed out the team name limit with his team name. So that's pretty funny. Blayne, you won. Who did you beat? You beat. I can't get it to load. One of our Minnesota.
Last name Watson, I think.
Yes, Watson. Over from Minnesota. He's the sideline reporter over there for them. 84-60. And top scores this round go to Ben Bear from MLS and our Patreon supporter Jason Morris with 102 points. One of 3 people in the league who got triple-digit points this week. So congrats, guys. This is a pretty vicious league, and I am bearing the brunt of it right now, so I'm hoping to turn around after this poor start. But hey, that's why we have 2 seasons. If you're doing poorly right now and you're getting a little frustrated, don't worry. Keep playing. Keep an eye on the players and how they're performing. When things reset after the Gold Cup, it'll be a new season, and you'll be able to know who you're going to target when you move ahead. So don't be discouraged, especially if this is your first season. Now, guys, let's talk about round 3 and just some of the key fantasy takeaways. And I've got several that I wanted to mention, and feel free to chime in whenever you'd like. We're going to just go from top to bottom, starting out. Seattle is on a roll. I read that this was their best start, tied their best start ever in the club history with these 3 wins. Ladero, Morris, Rodriguez, clearly the 3 fantasy go-tos that you want to look at with these guys. Haven't always been clean sheets, so you had to worry about some of the defense. Leardom, though, is been a standout, but we've mentioned both he and Smith several times in the podcast, so you know what we think about them. They have 2 more easy games after this bye round. They're playing Vancouver, I believe. Let me load that up real quick. They're playing Vancouver at away and then RSL at home. So I think we'll have at least 2 more pretty solid games fantasy-wise from Seattle before we have to start worrying about some of the tougher teams coming in and cutting into those points. One note about Chicago, though, they are kind of disappointing, especially their big names. But CJ Sapong has 2 goals and 1 assist in his first 3 games. He played up top, came back off to the wing when Nicollet came in, and he's still been doing some production. And that's I don't know if I'm going to tell you to get. In fact, I'm not going to tell you to get CJ Sapong. But if something comes up and you've got some money lying around and you look and you're like, I'm going to take a flyer on Chicago, he seems to be the one producing right now. So keep an eye on his form.
He seems like a good expensive switcheroo option.
Right, yeah. Later in the season when you have just way too much money.
Some people are getting to that point already.
They are. But I mean, it's worth noting. I mean, he seems to have accepted it pretty well. He's succeeding, and he's a bright point for Chicago right now. So that trade has paid off for them. We mentioned Sorrow in our review of our teams. Right now, he is outperforming the expectations of what he would do. I don't think he had ever scored for the Crew before this season, or had been very rarely, and he's got 2 goals right now. So just careful. He's probably going to be good for some price rises for the next couple of weeks, but don't expect to get goals from Sorrow every round. Also want to point out Paxton Pomykal from that game against Dallas. He got another start, and he's 6.7. So if he continues to do that, he's a great value with Dallas moving forward, especially for your switcheroos. Vancouver had a halftime sub that came in, Bangora, and he is a 6.6 midfielder. And he made a quick impact with the offensive form for Vancouver. So keep an eye on that if you do go with the Vancouver at some time. They've been scoring some goals. They haven't been on the right side of the total points scored at the end of the day, at the end of the game, but they have been putting up some points. And if he does continue to play, 6.6 is a great shout out for a value midfielder. Adding to that list that Blayne was talking about at the top of the show, how some of the value players were really coming on. But also, this is Houston, and Houston's weird. You got to watch out for that forward roulette goals that Houston has, and the CCL that's been going on has been causing some rotations. But Memo Rodriguez is a $5.6 million midfielder, 2 goals this week, and and a goal last week. So back-to-back games with goals. If he continues to see the field, even now that CCL's over, that's a steal in the right situation. So keep an eye on that. Someone going to comment, or just agreeing?
Agreeing.
Yeah.
Piatti's great on the road. Piatti's great at home. Piatti's just great. He's super impactful for the impact. Did you like that? But yeah, no, Piatti has been doing well this entire season. I think he's clearly a guy that we can go ahead and already say he's worth considering under the right matchups, home or away, as so many of these big players do. But you never know how they're going to be at the start of the season. Piatti seems to be rolling with that. They get harder for Montreal, though, over these next 3 rounds after the bye. So be careful with Montreal. They've got Sporting Kansas City away, New York City away, and then they have a double game week with DC and Columbus. So it's not going to be as easy, I think, as the first part of the season was with San Jose, Houston, and Orlando. But you never know. You never know. But Piatti's been a standout player there. And Urruti is on the score sheet with an assist at this last round. So that's good for him. Build some confidence and maybe see if that goes anywhere. It won't. Well, you know what I like to think that we do during this section is point out some of the players that people may not have on their radar, and he's probably not one of them. Yeah. But it's.
I mean, if he's on your radar, you should put him off your radar. Trust me, I've done that song and dance before.
I'm going to take a quick break right now because DC United won 5-0. This week. I will say I was talking on Sirius XM last week with Jason at the United States of Soccer, and I went with Acosta as my captain. He got me 30 points, so that was fantastic. And we had mentioned Rooney, and I'll say now what I said then, and I stand by this. I tend to prefer forwards or midfielders over forwards in big games like this, just because I like the bonus point potential that they have, especially when you're looking at someone like a Ruiz or a Ladero or a Rooney or an Acosta. Skylar Redpath did point out on Twitter when we were talking about some of this that set pieces that Rooney takes and is involved in, and his willingness to pass in general, I'll add, makes him a bit different of a player. And that's completely true, and I get it, but I can't fault you, and I'm not faulting myself if you did go with Acosta, because I just think that those midfielders tend to be so impactful, and their bonus points tend to pay off more usually than a forward. But Blayne, do you have DC comments?
Yeah.
Apologies?
Yeah, I really do have to issue a formal apology to everybody who follows me on Twitter and took my advice, which I know there was one guy who had it captain on Rooney, and after listening to us last week and then seeing my thing on Twitter, he switched away from Captain Rooney. And I don't remember who he landed on, but that one just made me cringe a little. I was very vocal on Twitter right before it that I had Rooney down as like my 8th or 9th forward for the round. I like some other matchups. It was, and as I put it today, Rooney sent Ramondo off into retirement with a hat trick. Ramondo couldn't get him this time, so yeah, I messed that one up. So sorry if anybody followed me on that one. I do stand by some of my initial comments, though. For this game, you can't predict a red card or multiple red cards and an early penalty like that and what it changes. I still think this RSL team has a lot to offer, but they got completely shredded on that with the penalty and then the red card, and then the floodgates just open. And when there's blood in the water, DC is that good and probably better than I expected to start the season.
Yeah, they're number 1 right now in the standings.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a comment, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, the reason that I had BWP in my lineup on the podcast last week instead of Rooney, because I had pretty much had to decide between those two because of my budget. I decided with BWP because of the difference between San Jose and RSL and their history. RSL had only conceded 1 goal over the 2 games that they had played so far, and they looked a little bit better defensively. San Jose, I don't think they've shipped 2+ in each of their games, at least. I don't remember what they would the first day, but I mean, they look like a total tire fire. And so I felt like the New York Red Bulls, especially, I didn't think they had the buy. I think they were more situated for price rises, and Rooney and DC United had been stopped in the second game against New York City, and I don't think New York City's defense is that good. So obviously, I had Wayne Rooney a lot better than Blayne did. I think I had him as like 3rd or 4th overall. And honestly, I probably should have switched BWP to Rooney if I hadn't done it in a panic. It was like, oh, shoot, the Man City game is over and Kaku is somehow not starting. Ben, I need to, because my son is playing and he had Kaku. Like, you got to go run over and switch your team. So if I didn't panic that, I probably would have switched to Rooney. But yeah, I mean, red cards and that make a huge difference. And I mean, the Red Bulls scored 4 goals. So it wasn't like they had a terrible performance, and it was just where the goals came from.
And I'll tell you what we'll try to do. I've been wanting to get a second video going for the last 3 weeks. Frankly, I've just been trying to think of a good topic or good focus for what we could do for sort of a late week follow-up video to the podcast. And this may be the great idea. So at me on Twitter, send an email, or do something. Let me know what you think. If you want us to do a short 15-minute, if even that long, 10 to 15-minute podcast, maybe it's just me, maybe some of the guys join, of what did we miss? What did we forget from the show? So if we didn't mention Rooney, if someone wants to be like, hey, you didn't talk about Rooney, what do you think about him? Send us that question and we can follow up on some of those quick replies that people are really having as burning questions. And maybe that can be the video that we do as a follow-up. So let us know if you like that idea, or if you have another idea for what you'd like to hear as a follow-up video, kind of a little treat that we have. So let us know about that. Moving on, LA Galaxy. So Alessandrini has been injured. Zlatan has been out. And so we've seen Pontius and Leggett back into the mix of things. They're both great values. With Zlatan coming back, I don't think we're going to be seeing Pontius out there anymore. But keep him on your radar. He played up top, and he got a goal last week, and that could be some great value and a great switcheroo option in the future under these right situations, especially since Zlatan doesn't like to play on turf as well. So keep both of those guys in mind for switcheroo options. Leggett in general, he's pretty solid. So when he's healthy and back, I expect him to be in the starting lineup. Will be a good option if you're trying to get some LA coverage and you don't have the money for someone like Alessandrini. Vela, oh my gosh, Vela paying off again in that LAFC game. I think LAFC has apologies again to Matt Pollard for his association with this team. But for LAFC, I think we've got two more good rounds out of them that you can expect Vela to do some production. I don't think he got the call up, Mike. Is that true? Is that right?
Vela did not.
Yeah,
yes.
That's what I thought. RSL at home this week, San Jose away the next week, and then DC, and then followed by Cincinnati. So over these next 4 rounds, there's probably at least 3 more good games for LA out there, and I think Vela is going to be a staple for a lot of teams going forward, especially with that form that he's on right now. This brings me to FC Cincinnati. I am rocking my Lexington orange and bluegrass scarf today. It was fantastic.
Bluegrass?
The orange and bluegrass, yes.
Nice.
It's pretty awesome. I'll show you the special little crest that we've got right here, the orange and bluegrass. That's right. That's right. So it's pretty awesome scarf, I must say. Great group member of the Pride and Lexington's. I think they've got about 60 members down here in Lexington right now, Lexington, Kentucky, and so it's rocking. It's growing. But fantastic game. 3-0 over Portland. Missing Diego Chara, huge for Portland. It's statistically significant that when he's not there, Portland does poorer, and that's why I was so willing to get SC Cincinnati players onto my team. They didn't all produce for me, but I mean, whatever, they won. So that was a fantastic game. It was great to see in person. I got to meet Andrew Wiebe, and that was really fun. We got to chat for a little while, like 5 seconds during the march, which was amazing. And then we got to chat for about 10 minutes during the game before it started. And he told me he set his team this week, and I think he really did. He's really trying. Made sure to double down on him to keep him accountable. And I even gave him a scarf to like guilt him into playing more. So we'll see how that pans out. We may have to like have Ben Bear revoke the scarf from him, or maybe we'll actually get a wooden spoon and engrave his name in it and send it to him if he stops playing. That could be pretty fun. But it was great fun to be at that game. Great fun to see the win, and great fun to meet Wiebe. And it was you can see my little towel back behind me. Didn't get the scarf, but I got the towel, so that's pretty cool. And it was great to see Cincinnati produce fantasy related now. They've got some midfielders there that have offer some value. Several call-ups, though, I know Michael mentioned later, so keep an eye on that. And Adi did go down with an ankle injury at the end of the first half. So if you are thinking about taking a flyer on him at some time, he may be out. He did have to get assisted off the field. Maybe it's just a sprain, but we'll have to keep an eye on Adi going forward. I want to talk about Atlanta now with you guys for a second. I know on Extra Time they were talking about, is Atlanta in trouble? And some of that answer was yes. And so now we'll have that little segment right here. Is Atlanta in trouble? I know they just crashed out of CCL, and this was Philadelphia, but it's Philadelphia on the road without Fabian. What happened?
Pity Martinez is not good. I mean, maybe he will become good, but he's not good. And I know Blayne is going to kick off this. He has absolutely no interest in passing to Joseph Martinez. There is no chemistry between them whatsoever. I mean, when Atlanta scored, Atlanta did have some chances where, if Joseph Martinez was a little bit more clinical, they could have won this game. But it's certainly not the Atlanta that we're used to. And so I think our fantasy expectations are going to have to change. But what it changed was when Barco came on the field, he was looking for Joseph Martinez, because to everyone else, Joseph Martinez is the best player on that team, not to Pity Martinez. Pity Martinez is the best player on Atlanta, according to Pity Martinez. And I don't know if DeBoer has the man management to fix that. And it's Pity's third game. I don't want to write him off completely. But watch it, because I watched that game entirely. It was one of the few games of this weekend I watched entirely. They're not in sync. They don't have the chemistry that Almiron and Joseph Martinez, which was really a very special chemistry. Not only because Almiron was a special player, but because they both were on the same wavelength. None of that is true. And Pity Martinez is not a good enough chance creator on his own. And everyone else is looking to give chances to Joseph Martinez. So, I think there is as far as fantasy is concerned, there's real trouble. I'm sure the team is going to make the playoffs. So it's not hit that much of a panic button. But as far as the Atlanta of last year, it's not coming back.
It's to point out that Cincinnati currently has more points than Atlanta. and is ranked 6th overall.
I would say something, but I'm sure you would hit me with another fact there.
Hey, I just hit it while you can, and I'm just pounding the drum for right now while I can.
I mean, Atlanta has never. Cincinnati is currently leading that tie on away goals too.
We were also never at any point always losing to Seattle. So,
yeah, I crunched the numbers today for Twitter just because I was posting a topic that I wanted to kind of discuss with some people. Your top 5 Atlanta attackers are down 3.7 million on the season already in value. So if you've been riding the Atlanta bandwagon, you have taken a massive hit, and that includes both Martinez's, Gressel, Barco, and I'm blanking on the last one.
Blaybe?
Yeah, I think that's who the other one I was looking at. So I mean, that's a 3.7 million drop. That means they're trending down hard and the system's trying to readjust their value towards away from being premium players. This is just bad. I've been honestly almost looking for fights on social media with Atlanta fans, not as in like coming to blows, bad fights, but I keep asking every single Atlanta fan that I talk to, who's your attacking midfielder? Who's your 10? I watched part of this game over the weekend. The commentators in the game kept saying Martinez was a cam or Martinez was a 10. He is definitely not a 10. So I don't know what delusion these commentators are under. I mean, I don't want to be harsh on them because I know we've got a kind of a budding soccer culture in some of these areas, and they may not have the greatest soccer minds coming in. But if that's what they're being told and that's what they're being fed, they're mistaken. They're being misled.
Well, and that's the Atlanta line. I mean, they gave him the 10 jersey, and that's what they promoted him on. Is that this is Almiron's replacement, like for like. I mean, that is 100% Atlanta's promotional material, and those announcers are, I mean, they're not the worst announcers as far as this, but they're going to spit the company line. Atlanta's announcers.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm not holding that against them at all. And I talked to a couple of Atlanta fans today that were a little more real about it. They said DeBoer is playing a 3-4-3 because you don't need that 10 in that system. If you play it a certain way, you can do it with 2 more box-to-box defensive midfielder types in the middle and let your wide mids do a little bit of the work, and you put your playmaker like Gressel and Pitti on the wings. And that can work, but it's not. So now it's time for Atlanta to shift. What you said when Barco came on, a couple of people said that was a formation shift to a 4-5-1. That means they've got to have a playmaker in there. If that's Barco being the playmaker, so be it. Let him do it. Atlanta needs to either pick Barco or Martinez or Gressel and stick one of them in there as a 10 and switch the formation, because until they do, they are going to continue to tank this season. They will not be in my fantasy lineup until they permanently switch that formation, because there's too much risk. I mean, maybe at some point when either one of the Martinezes is down to about an 8-5, we'd be stupid not to take them on some of the good matchups. But that's going to be a long time of adjusting down, but they're tracking towards it right now.
And we can see the value does seem to be reacting quicker. We still had several players getting 0.5 gains. I had maybe 3 myself. I almost got a 3 million gain this week. But Ibarra was one. He got 1 point. He's been doing well the last 2 games, and he gets 1 point this time and goes down in points. So I think we are seeing some more of that current form not being or the current form having more impact in the previous form not carrying over as much. It definitely still is. It's all about that average, and it's a little bit difficult, especially this time of the year, to make those guesses because of the guess that had to be used at the beginning of the season in order to put the players at where they're at. But you guys, I think, have hit the nail on the head with some of those woes with Atlanta. Looking forward, they're on a bye this week. Next, it's away to Columbus, and then they're on another bye. Personally, you guys let me know if you disagree. But personally, I think that maybe next round against Columbus, especially since they have been doing pretty well, you wait. Don't take an Atlanta player and just see what this team can do. They don't have CCL anymore to get that. After their next bye, this would be round, I don't know. It's on the April 9th through 13th round right there.
7th?
Yeah, there we go, round 7. And but they're going against New England, so that should be a much easier game for them. And maybe that's a time when you can give a chance for 1 or 2 Atlanta players. But I would wait. I would fade Atlanta coming up in round 5 and just see how they can regroup and how they actually line up against Columbus. Moving on, last couple of games I want to mention. We talked about Bradley and how he got 2 games before. Several of those Toronto players looked like a good bet, and they did get some points. Bradley came up with assist, and then another value player alert here. Chapman, a $6.2 million midfielder, came away with 2 goals in this game. But will this be his last time? They had CCL as well. He has not been putting in full 90s in either. I think he did 1 minute in the first game, and then he got 70 something or 60 something in this game. So the future of Chapman may not be as a great value player, but definitely one to keep an eye on in case he does work his way back into the starting picture, especially with Canadian Cup in the future for Toronto. And then finally, Blayne, we might let you chime in on this one again right here. Sporting Kansas City does not rotate.
They're looking to get the points early. Vermes was on record saying if you want to be an elite team in this league and in CCL and really in the world, you can't rotate just because of a little bit of fixture congestion all the time. You've got to be able to play through it, and he's putting the team on the field that he thinks can play through it. Russell did get a break. Rowe came in, but I think that was the only real rotation. Shallowy picked up a knock in that CCL game and came out, and Jerso came right back in. But he's, other than injuries, he's been pretty faithful to his core group of guys and letting them run the show. And you can fault him for some things. Maybe it was a little bit of tired legs against Colorado. Maybe it's just the one big mistake that was there, which with all the saves Mealy has had for Kansas City, he's allowed one mistake at some point. I mean, this was a costly one for fantasy managers, but can't fault him too much. Rubio just had an amazing pick right there, and that was Colorado's lone goal against him, was picking up a goalkeeper error.
But you got to say, coming away with 1 point when you're traveling to Colorado, I can't think is looked at as too big of a disappointment.
No, not at all.
Especially when you played on Thursday.
Yeah, we haven't.
Going to altitude is not a good trip.
Yeah. We haven't won in Colorado since 2014. I mean, this was not a big shocker. They were talking this was the final of 6 games in 21 days, something like that. And you think the first team really rested for the 1 game in Panama. The rest of it's been pretty much a first team all the way through. These guys are sitting on 4 points in the West with a road loss and a road tie. I mean, I can't complain a whole lot on this. And we're the last team alive in CCL for MLS. So all things considered, I think this was a pretty good stretch for them. Just don't expect a lot of rotation. I think we've got our answer here. The CCL continues as U.S. Open Cup continues. Don't expect a lot of rotation in the MLS lineup. Vermes is going to go for it.
Yeah, and their schedule is pretty good. Over after this bye, they've got home to Montreal, then away to Cincinnati, and then home to the New York Red Bulls, and away to San Jose, and then home to New England. So that's a pretty good lineup for Sporting Kansas City, and I could easily see working in a couple. I don't know if I'd go 3 Sporting Kansas City, especially with some of their pricings, but I could see a couple of Sporting Kansas City players working into the lineup most of these weeks coming up. After
Definitely.
All right, well, guys, that's what I have for the fantasy recap. Fantasy recap plus, because it's a short round 4, so we extended this a little bit with some chit chat. Anything else that I missed or that I got wrong, or that you want to add about fantasy round 3 as important fantasy takeaways? There we go.
Yeah, I'm going to plug it here because I don't think we don't have it on the rest of the rundown, and I think this is a good spot to really bring it up this week.
Sure.
I did some more value experiments with it. I know I posted on Twitter my value lineup. This is who I would run if I was strictly playing the value game. Quintero was on that lineup. He posted a 4, but still got the full 0.5 increase. His average over 3 games, so this makes it real easy. We can see that full average is 11 points over 3 games. He started at 12 million. This round up to 12.5 now. So that was a good increase. Some of the other guys we saw, I had De Leon and Barath both in there for the value increase as cheaper defenders, just to see how it goes. Both of them got the full 0.5 despite putting up 2s on the round. So look at that 3-week average, especially the previous game. Actually, De Leon's average is up a little bit. He's only got the 2 games in, and he had the monster 13-point game on that first one. So that most recent game is huge for that, because it's right there. If you do the 3 and the 5-week average, even if they're weighted more heavily to that recent one, that second previous game is still going to be huge. So if somebody goes off, they're probably going to get some holdover value on that. But the third game in the set is not going to give you nearly as much pull. So just as we're trying to play it, I know last year it was a big issue for the value gains. I'm just trying to be as open as I can about what I'm finding. That way everybody's on a level playing field that wants to follow along with this. Because I hate the idea that somebody unlocks this system and can get a 5 to 10 million boost over somebody who doesn't know quite what's going on and is just picking players. I kind of want this to be a level playing field at the top of the field, and I don't want money to be the sole deciding factor on who gets first and who doesn't. So yeah, that's why definitely. I'm trying to plug this a lot. So I saw some of that. And then the new guys, Royer comes in with a 13, goes up 0.5 from 7.5. Davis went up 0.3 on a 7-point with a 7.5 start. So just under a point per million, and he got a 0.3 increase. So just throwing out some numbers there that you can see if you exceed your value, you're probably going to get the 0.4, 0.5. If you come in right around it, you're going to hover around that 0.3 increase.
And if you're wondering, if you're new and you're wondering why we're talking about a 3-week and a 5-week average, that was because last year the price value changing was based on sort of this rolling 3 to 5 week average that players had with their prices, and that's different a little bit now. We know that the weighting is different, and so we've only had 3 weeks to look at so far. So that's why we're looking at our 3-week average, and we know it was important last year. So after a couple more rounds, we should start to see some people who are working on models get some of that out, and we can see what's looking like the way to go.
Yeah, I mean, this week is going to be big for that, because we're going to get into the 4th week for some of these teams. So, I think Sauron might be a really good test case, because his 10 is going to drop off of the 3-week average. Obviously, I don't know what he'll do this week, but I mean, he is on the road. Columbus has, so there's a pretty good chance that he has some like a lower point. So we'll probably see his average go down a little bit. At least for the 3-week average, maybe not as much for the 5 weeks. So that'll probably be a pretty good sign to kind of follow along and to see. So if you're new to the game, you don't really want to do a whole lot of price checking out. You want to kind of do a quick, check after round 4. That's the person I would look at.
Well, I disagree with that, because he's got a 15 from this week that he just added. So he's going to replace a 10 with the 15. So yeah, he's going to have a little bit of a drop off, but he's got a huge one in the middle. Unfortunately, the guys that I would really be looking at are not here at the moment. I think this is going to be an interesting round to see, but I think New England's going to have some interesting potential here, and a few of the New York guys. I know this is only game 2, but we'll see what they do, depending, because they're right at that middle price range, and see how they fare.
Cincinnati is actually a good team to look at, because they don't have a bye. So that's they don't have a bye ever, I'm pretty sure.
And since he's a good one, because their first game is bad.
Yeah,
whereas their second and third game, there's generally better scores. So if the dropping off if the 3-week average is really important, and they have a good game this week, we could see a lot of increases there.
Yep. All right. Thank you so much, guys, for those fantasy insights. We'll get more about value over these next few rounds. So if you have questions about value, send them in. Send them to us on Twitter. Send them to us at r/FantasyMLS. Go to Discord chat. Lots of people talking about value, and we're happy to answer any questions that people have about that. Moving on to our housekeeping section. As we mentioned, this is a huge bye week. There are only 10 teams who are playing at all. So this is a great time for switcheroos, auto-roos, keeperoos, anything. It's going to be super easy this round, and that's going to make a lot of teams probably look kind of similar, and we'll talk about that in just a second. But yeah, only 10 teams playing. Be sure to keep that in mind when you're setting your teams or forgetting like Andrew Wiebe does sometimes. I also want to thank all the Patreon members who have joined us this season, everybody who's returned to us. Thank you so much for being a part of the show. Thanks to all the new players. I didn't get a chance to look up everything tonight, but we'll give you a shout out in April for all the players. Again, thanks for making this show possible by donating and participating. We have a fantastic head-to-head league. We've been able to get a great sponsor in Beard Care Club to be able to give back to that. They're going to help us with some prizes and some drawings. So we like to do as much as we can for those of you who are willing to actually support us with money to help make this fun with the prizes and gift cards that we get out. And it's just a great community to be a part of. If you're interested in checking more of that out, head over to patreon.com/MLSFI and find out more about how you can get involved in the MLS Fantasy Insider community. That's patreon.com, patreon.com/MLSFI. Right before Mike's injury news, I'm going to give a quick red card rundown, unless you have all that, Mike.
No, you had it on the rundown,
yes.
So go for it.
Montreal Diallo, it got a red card. He got a straight red card, I believe. RSL 2 red cards that we mentioned before for Savarino and for Silva. And then Portland's Mabiala got a red card as well. So those are the only 4 teams that had red cards. And only of those teams, or 3 teams, 4 players, and only RSL is playing next week. So that'll be juicy. And now, Mike, with the call-up update.
Okay, well, I'll throw out some injury stuff first. Going for this weekend, the 2 big injuries are Fernando Adi. We mentioned him earlier, coming off with an ankle injury. It looked like a big issue. Plus, Cincinnati is playing on the turf of New England this week. I would be very doubtful that he plays this week. The other one is Velo for the New York Red Bulls. He just came back from a leg injury, and it looks like he picked up another one on a bad tackle. That probably should have gotten a red card. There may be a disco for I don't remember which San Jose player it is. Not that it matters. They're terrible regardless. What's that?
Jetson.
But I haven't heard an official timeline on that, but I would be doubtful if Velo plays unless we get some good news later on in the week. And then kind of one other injury situation that's brewing is Zlatan. He was expected to come back this week. He didn't. There's been some concerns from Kevin Baxter of the LA Times that that injury is a little bit more severe, maybe like an actual ACL injury. No confirmation on that. We know how bad LA Galaxy is as far as injuries. So be aware about that. Coming out of the international break, maybe we'll get some news. We'll see. But I just checked and I didn't see any updates from that. So as far as the call-ups, now, one thing I will say is that it looks like MLS Fantasy has updated it so that all the players who are an international call-up do have a red dot next to their name. So there is an indication. But let's go over it anyway on the pod just to kind of refresh that way you can hear a name and be like, oh yeah, that's right, I can't play him. So FC Dallas is Gonzalez. That's an important one because that's a change because of Zack Stefan, who we'll get to in a little bit. Acosta and Grazo from FC Dallas, so not Kellen Acosta, but FC Dallas is Acosta. For Colorado, I have the only player that they have is Hundley, who's a U19 player, so I don't think he's even been starting for them. For the Red Bulls, Kaku, who may not be playing anyway with the issue that he's been having on Twitter. Aaron Long and Murillo for the Red Bulls. So I know those are 2 big players that fantasy manager will be looking at. For Orlando, it's Mendez, Will Johnson, and Benji Mitchell. For the Union, it's Andre Blake, Burke, Creval, and Real. Or Real, I don't know how he says it. For the Crew, it's a whole bunch. Keita, Zardes, Will Trapp, Miram, Francis, and Zack Stefan. Now, Zack Stefan was called up, but he's been released from U.S. camp for injury. I'm assuming if he's released from U.S. camp that it's serious enough to keep him out, but that's not a definite. I mean, the reason I'm saying that, sometimes we see these games played with injuries, but for Zack Stefan, because he's already been bought by Manchester City, and because the work permits in the UK are really dependent upon national team appearances, I'm going to assume that if it's serious enough for him to miss national teams, it's serious enough for him to miss a road game against the Philadelphia Union. So if you really want him, keep an eye out on him. He'll probably he may get a price rise. He's had 2 good weeks in a row, but I would be very cautious about that and check the lineup. For LAFC, probably the biggest one is that Carlos Vela was not called up, so he is available this week. And let's just be honest, you have to have him in your lineup and you have to captain him. Maybe we'll disagree about that, the captain part at least, but you have to have him on your team. However, they are missing a bunch of other players. Christian Ramirez got called up, El Munir and Vassal were the call-ups. For RSL, in addition to those 2 red cards, I have Rusnak, their new striker Johnson, and Baird all missing time. For the Revolution, it's Same, Renix, and Herval. And then for FCC, it's a whole bunch: Cruz, Waston, Maya, Maddox, and Powell. So a lot of starters for Cincinnati are missing. So those are the call-ups. You can see certain teams are hit a little bit worse than others. So we'll talk about how that affects them going forward.
All right, Mike, thank you so much for that review of everything. We'll try to get, if you type that up, we'll try to get that. Oh, no, you had it posted over at r/fantasymls, don't you? Yep.
Yeah, it's posted on Reddit. A bunch of people have been commenting. I think that's complete. I worked. Also wanted to say big shout out to the people in the Discord chat. We pretty much spent Monday morning making up our own list and then comparing notes. Like, wait, I had Rusnak and so very big thanks to MC Football of Discord. Wanted to give him a shout out because he did a lot of work on that. And there was a few people on Reddit who posted lists of their own.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah, everyone head over to r/fantasymls over at Reddit and check that list if you forgot or didn't follow along with Mike or whatever. But yeah, it's right there. And a shout out to the Discord again. All right, let's move on to our ESPN Plus Round 4 preview. If you guys have not checked out ESPN Plus yet, I've started using it last week and I found it pretty easy, and the quality is good, which I know was a concern for a lot of people. DC United, FCC. If you can't see, I'm doing this little elbow thing. Yeah, you can see it a little bit. But no, ESPN Plus, I've enjoyed it. I thought it's pretty well. You can head over to MLSFantasyBoss.com. We've got a link there in the sidebar if you're interested in checking it out and joining. So it's $5 a week, $5 a month, and pretty cheap. Pretty cheap. Check it out, ESPN Plus. Okay, so round 4, 2 things I want to do. Had a question from Reddit from somebody new that I wanted to highlight now. We'll talk about this again next week for sure. But Shimmy Shimmy Rabinho over on Reddit said, first timer here, if you could do like 30 seconds on how midweek matchups work. Yeah, sure, no problem. It's not important this week. Just reiterate that, everybody. This is a bye week. Starts on Saturday. Just things as normal. But next 2 weeks, we have Tuesday games. So we have midweek games the next 2 weeks for round 5 and 6. So the way that will work is the round will start early. Tuesday or Wednesday tends to be when those, or Tuesday or Thursday tends to be when those games happen. Usually it's going to be Tuesday. I keep saying Tuesday. That is wrong. I am so sorry.
Yeah, it's Friday in the next
Wednesday. There we go.
Yeah. And I mean the next 2, I think like 5 and 6, I don't think we have them until Friday. I don't think we start midweek games until round 7, in which it starts on a Tuesday.
There we go. Okay. So we're going to cut that.
So that's where you got it.
Yeah, we're not going to cut that. That's just stupid. I have some color coding on a chart and I just forgot what my color coding was. On round 7, there we go. Thank you, Mike. When the Wednesday games start happening, there we go. Wednesday, not Tuesday. When Wednesday games start happening, the round's just going to start earlier, and so those teams that play on Wednesday will be locked, and you won't be able to use them for switcheroos. They'll be horrible switcheroos. You won't be able to use them for switcheroos, but they will not impact transfers later on. So actually, if they'd make horrible people to have on the field for your switcheroo, but if they are a switcheroo option, you'll get to see those points. So in that way, they'd be great switcheroos. I made this really
good players to put on the bench.
Yeah. No, I've done a horrible job at talking about this right now because I wasn't prepared for it at all. I'll be much better next week. I know, right? I'm so, shimmy. I'm so sorry with just sticking my foot in my mouth. So all you really need to know, I'm not going to edit this out, but if I was, then I would right now to save face. But
you're not like Andrew Wiebe. You don't need to edit
I own it. No, so all you really need to know from that ramble right there that I'll cut down next week is that the round just starts early. Those teams will get locked out, but it won't impact any of the other transfers you can still make. It could impact your switcheroos, but just keep an eye on how those teams perform and where you place them so that you can still make adjustments to your team afterwards. That's all it is. So it's just a quirk of our system thanks to our buys and how everything's worked. So we'll cover it more next week. But great question. Welcome to MLS Fantasy. And if you are new and have a question and you want me to maybe get it right on the first try or butcher it, send it to me, and I'm happy to go through it and help just like demystify some of those things that you guys might have on your mind about how this game works. Let us know. We're happy to help in every way that we can. Okay.
Yeah. It's something we should probably throw in if they're a new players who aren't used to those midweek games, and obviously we'll get to this more in round 7. But if a team does play 2 games in a double game week, they get points for both of those games. So if Wayne Rooney starts in game 1 and he gets a goal, and then he starts in game 2 and gets a goal in there, he's going to get credit for both goals. It's not best game of, or not an average of, or anything like that. So obviously those players will be very important. Dealing with rotation will be something important, and we'll get to all those questions when those weeks arise. So it's definitely something to be worried about, but thankfully you got a few more weeks just to get used to who is good and who's not before we get into all that mess.
Yeah, we'll talk about how the do not plays work and players locking and things like that. So
I'm going to jump in here too. Shimmy Shammy, great question. I'm doing a new series with Fantasy Boss, so I'm going to plug it early for Golden Rules, and it's specifically designed for newer players like you to try to pick up on some of these expert tactics as early as possible and kind of just share some of the wisdom we've got as a collective and just get it out there. And the double game week one is coming. We've got till round 7, so I'm going to be hitting a lot of the easy to pick up advanced tactics like how to set up a proper switcheroo in the double game week and what to look for in certain players and all of that. So be on the lookout for that. And for the rest of the community, if you have those questions, if you're new, I've got this series rolling out every week tailored to answering some of those questions. Last week's was captains and how do you pick your captain between a forward and a midfielder and all of that. So if you have those, hit us up with them, because I can turn those into an article that you can go back and reference over and over and over again instead of having to find that specific time in the podcast as well. It's sometimes a lot easier just to listen to us talk about it, but we'll throw those out there. So keep hitting us up with those comments. We love them.
Yeah, and if I like your question, I might put it in the article or the newsletter for MLSsoccer.com that I put out each week. Last week we talked about when to chase on-form players, when to chase value, and it's just tips like that apply to new and old players as well. So yeah, keep throwing those questions out at us. We love them. Thank you so much. The second question, that's sort of the thesis for this whole discussion about the round 4 expectations, comes from RJ Gage. Actually, that's not his Twitter name at R, but it's Jessup, one of our Patreon supporters, Cincinnati fan as well. So that makes him awesome. And his question is everyone expecting that there's going to be a fantasy MLS template for next week with just so few teams playing? I assume everyone will max players from Dallas, New York Red Bulls, LAFC, and maybe Columbus. Cincinnati versus New England looks only interesting for match differentials. So that's a great question. And I think, guys, I don't think we need to answer that right now separately, but just keep that in mind as we're answering this section about how a template team may be impacting your picks, what other people are picking, and what people may want to do to break the template, or if they even should. So with that in mind, let's do keepers, defenders, and clean sheet chances, starting this off. Blayne.
Yeah, so right away, I'm going to throw you out the curveball. I think this is a great spot to break from the cookie cutter. You look at this with the way RSL is going to be decimated by absences due to red cards, due to call-ups. They're going to be missing a lot of key players. That makes LAFC one of your hot picks for defensive stats. but they've got the offensive firepower to really take advantage of it. So where do you go? Like Tyler Miller is probably my #1 goalkeeper this round, followed up by Luis Robles. But currently, who I have in my lineup is Maurer of Dallas. Colorado is a little streaky, a little hit or miss. I'm really high on them this year. But Maurer is probably going to get the start for Dallas. He's at 4.5. So that's the immediate keeperoo option, first game of the round. And I've got him rolling into either the New England or the Cincinnati goalkeeper, Richie, depending on who starts there, just to see. I go big or go home on some of this. I think a 4.5 starting keeper, if he hits in that first game, is going to be huge. That said, I don't necessarily trust Dallas to go get the points getters somewhere, so that leaves me kind of a little hit or miss there. So I think this is a great spot to use one of your Dallas spots on probably the better team at home, and go from there. With that said, Hollingshead, I think, is one of those cookie cutter picks. He's got the average, he's got the price. I think he should probably be in every lineup. He's been putting up the bonus points. After that, it really is kind of a take your pick. Columbus is going to be missing some players. I've got Sauro in there for the money. If you're playing the value game, he's your cookie cutter pick. But if I was playing strictly points, again, LAFC, New York Red Bulls, that's where I'm kind of going for this one. So the three I've got right now on defense are Hollingshead, Parker, and Sauro, with Maurer being my starting goalkeeper.
Mike.
So I have similar at keeper. I have Maurer and Richie. Then going forward, I have one little each of LAFC and New York Red Bulls. I have right now Walker Zimmerman. I know there are more or cheaper options, but frankly, right now I had the money, so I just went with him. Also figure maybe he's a decent set piece chance. I have to kind of do some more research to kind of see about that, but I basically just have him in there as a placeholder for someone from LAFC because of how good that they've been. I have Duncan from the New York Red Bulls. Cheap 5.2, seems to be started, has good averages. So I think he was originally priced as a non-starter. It looks like he's made his way into the starting lineup. So I think he's good for a price rise and good for a pretty good opportunity at home against Orlando. Then otherwise, I have Ziegler on my bench from FC Dallas. I didn't have Hollingshead. Ziegler's had a little bit higher average. I think he's gotten a goal. So I'm thinking he's going to get a price rise or at least the opportunity for one. So I have him on my bench. And then I have, and Reid, you can help me out in the pronunciation here. Deplanier from FC. What's that?
Deplane. I was going to say, because you know I'm so good at pronunciation. So
Deplane.
It is.
Yeah, I have Deplane.
So a lot of people want to say Deplant, but it's actually Matteo.
Yeah, see, I wanted to Frenchifize it.
I know, right?
I'm being from Louisiana, but so Deplane. He had the last two rounds were pretty good. So right now I have him sitting there. I'm not really certain if I want to stick with that. But I have 3 Dallas Red Bulls and LAFC. And so, to look otherwise, do I trust Revs players? I don't know if I really trust Columbus on the road with, and that's probably one we should address. I didn't put Sauro in this. Maybe I will for a price rise, but I don't really trust them all that much without Will Trapp, without Zardes, and probably without Stefan. That's a big impact on their defensive and their defensive scheme. So I'm a little suspicious on them.
Yeah, so for Cincinnati, of course, they're not going to have Waston right there, and Blayne is probably the most versatile player that we have. He's been playing on the left right now. I think normally he is more of a right side, so with Garza probably back to the mix, he's subbed on the last 2 rounds. I assume he will take up his normal spot as well. Powell will be gone, so we could see the Blayne move either onto the right or just straight up into center because he did some center as well. So he's really a guy who can play any of the positions that are needed from him on defense. So he could be anywhere on the field in that back line. For me, looking at this round, there have been 12 clean sheets total during these first 3 rounds. Most of them came in round 2. one in round one, and the rest, very few of them came this round three. So I am just fed up with defenders right now. Just not having any of it. So I am budget in the back, totally right there. I think this is the reverse fantasy mullet right here, Blayne. Budget in the back and just everything into the front attacking that I can. So I have looked for the cheapest players that I can possibly find from home teams that may have a good shot at a clean sheet. Just like you guys have been saying, I like the New York Red Bulls and I like LAFC as the best probably clean sheet chances that we have against Orlando, which has not been great, and Real Salt Lake, which has also not been great and is missing 2 starters with red cards. So I have the Silva right now just because he's super cheap, and I believe he's good for the start. And then I also have Pedroso. He's a bit of a placeholder to see what happens. I have a little bit of money left over. I know he filled in for Cannon when he was gone, so I'm just waiting to see who really starts in the back there, and I'll go with whoever is the absolute cheapest. But I've got 1.1 million extra in my bank right now, so I can fill in a little bit extra for a defender there. I splurged and went with Robles as my keeper, but I may go with Richie, or I may go with Maurer, like you guys were suggesting as well. But yeah, I just want budget as much as I can. And the crazy one that I went with, because I know that Columbus is probably one of the most significant teams suffering. Actually, maybe Columbus and Cincinnati are some of the 2 of the more significant teams suffering from international call-ups this week. But I just threw in Gaddis right now. And I didn't even check to see how he's been playing, and I don't care because he's 4 million. I really don't care. I don't care at all. He's 4 million. Columbus's attack may not be as much of a bite as it was, but even if it isn't, I really don't care. I have 2 other just 4-point scrubs right now, and what I may do, since I don't know how Philadelphia is going to roll, I might take a chance on a New England player or a Cincinnati player later in the week and put both of those players on my bench and just have 2 scrub placeholders and just let whichever defender has the higher score sub on, because I really don't care. I'm just gone for total budget, which is maybe different. And where do you guys stand on this with the call-ups and the buys? Is this a week where you think defenses will be a standout because of missing players, or do you think that it will be the same scenario that we've been seeing and we'll see a lot of these sort of 1-1 games or just no clean sheets?
It really depends on the team and how badly they're decimated. One team I don't think we've given enough credit to is Colorado for this, myself included. Other than a spectacular Johnny Russell free kick, they shut down Sporting Kansas City. I mean, that was a 1-0 game into the 80th minute, and Russell just moment of magic. You're talking about FC Dallas minus a few players. I mean, Brian Acosta has been a huge asset for them. Carlos Gruezo, from the few years I've gotten to watch him play, he contributes a lot to the attack. He kind of plays that Chara, Ozzy Alonso role as a defensive midfielder. He gets in there and gets the work done, but he really does help focus the attack going forward on that. That's 2 big pieces, and then Jesse Gonzalez missing in the back too. That's 2 big pieces plus your goalkeeper that's missing against a Colorado team that doesn't look that bad this year. Do you think Dallas can score without those guys? I don't know. I'm on the fence on that. So it's one of those weigh your options here, but Dallas is missing a few key players. Colorado's going to have a mostly intact team at this point. I think they're only missing some subs or something like that. Maybe you go with that unit that's together against a completely missing team, and that's one of those where Colorado could get a huge boost from this. But on the flip side, Columbus missing a few guys, I mean, that could be a huge boost for the Philadelphia attack that's looked pretty terrible all season. Outside of Fabian, it's been almost nothing from Philadelphia. So maybe this is a chance where you go look, oh, Philly's got a few absences, but this is a chance where their offense is really going to be able to click against a little bit disjointed defense. So I think it's largely situational on who's missing from what team and how important those figures are for that team and the way they usually play.
Yeah, that's actually I guess you stole my thunder, but maybe Mike's thunder as well, for the more offensive side about Colorado. And that's why I didn't go with any Dallas defenders besides Pedroso, or really go heavy with them, just because I am a little concerned about Colorado and what they could put up. And I don't know what to expect from Dallas with some of their pieces missing. So I think that some of the offenses that we have available to us are still going to go really well. And so my general strategy for this entire round is cheap on defense and put as much into the attack as I can. If you do want to take a risk on a New England player, because Mike already talked about probably the better pick from Cincinnati, they're kind of expensive for how bad they are, but Bye is a good option. It's a bye week, so go with Bye. I guess he's 4.4. He's played the last couple of rounds for them, so that's about as a cheap of a switcheroo option as you could get if you're really going for some differential right there. I think a lot of people are going to be banking on New York and LA as core players for them. It's just going to depend on if you want to actually throw some guys into the attack, or if you want to spend 2 of your 3 player positions on that defense. And I think I don't know where the template's going to be with that. I think people are going to try to diversify it and then try to get some of that attack out of there. So that's just my spot. If you want someone cheaper from Cincinnati, you still have Haglund, who's 5.6 and will continue to be in the middle right there. Garza is 5, so that could be a really sneaky pick as well from Cincinnati to get some offense out of them.
So this is what I wanted to say about the defense and offense and clean sheets. I think this week defense is going to be your differential. If you're talking about the template teams, a lot of the good diverse attackers are plucked up by international injuries. I mean, RSL pretty much has no attackers between the red cards international call-ups. Philly has lost Burke. Cincinnati doesn't have Adi. Blayne just talked about a bunch of the absences for FC Dallas. And I mean, the New York Red Bulls don't have Kaku. So you're pretty much, they don't have Below either. So, you don't have a whole lot of choices to pick from. So I think when you're filling out your team, you start with your LAFC, you start with your Red Bulls players. But there's not a whole lot of great offensive options out of that. I mean, I can probably tell you who's most people's offensive players are going to be this week, with like maybe 1 or 2 variations. Defense is going to be where there's a lot of difference. So for me, I had a bunch of extra money left up because the midfielders this week aren't the best picks, aren't the premium midfielders. And so you can kind of like, the reasons I picked Zimmerman is like, he's a little bit better, consistent average. And I think this may be where the differential is this week. So, I don't think there's a whole lot of great options because let's be honest, there's not a whole lot of great options anywhere this week. Outside of Red Bulls and LAFC, he seems to be kind of struggling, and Columbus has been good, but they've been hit hard by the injury call-up. So, although I do like Columbus's matchup against Philly for one reason, but we'll get to that later.
All right, thank you guys. This also hits on a Reddit question that we got from Le Petit Prof 96. Maybe. Yeah. That was part of his question asking us about general strategies for the week. So I hope that helps you get a little bit of an insight into what we're thinking as well. Let's move on to midfielders now, Mike.
Okay. So midfielders, I think you start with uncertainty about LAFC. Lee Nguyen did not play in the last game. I should have mentioned that in the injury report. If he plays, I might shuffle this a little bit. But right now I have Daniel Royer coming off a great week without Kaku. Again, I think he'll be involved, and at $8 million and almost certain to get a price rise with his 13 points last week. I think he's probably a must-own this week. I also have Paxton Pomykal. He started the last 2 games. He subbed on in the first game. So that first game will drop off of the 3-week average. So 6.7, real cheap. Regardless of whatever Dallas's problems are, I'm going to take a 6.7 attacker who is putting up consistent bonus points. I think he's a great option. And then I have Gill from New England Revolution. He's scored all of their goals this year. With FC Cincinnati's problems defensively, I think if there's any problems that they have, I think Gill is going to be involved in that game. It's a home game for them. They haven't looked great, but they haven't looked as terrible as we've seen in years past. So you know, I think he's pretty much the only Revolution player I trust between price and output. So I have Gil, and then I have Pedro Santos on the bench, 7.5. What I like about Columbus's matchup against the Philadelphia Union is the Union have been playing more of a diamond, whereas Columbus really works on the wings. And so I can see someone like Pedro Santos, who's on the wing, getting a little bit more crosses. And he's not going to have Zardes, but he's going to have Patrick freaking Mullins to cross to this week. You guys know I love Patrick Mullins.
Just been waiting for it, haven't you?
Oh, absolutely. So I mean, I think he can have some success, and at 7.5, I'm willing to put him on my bench as Potter on Ottaru.
Blayne.
Yeah, actually, we talk about cookie cutters, and Mike and I think a lot alike on some of these weeks. Royer, Gill, and Paul McCall were the first three midfielders I added to my team. Carlos Gill, he's the only bright spot for Philly or for New England this year so far. And in a normal week, I would not be taking him. But given the call-ups for FC Cincinnati, I think he's almost a must-own at this point. There's going to be a little disorganization in the back. It's inevitable in these weeks. And you're talking about a team that's only played 3 times together in regular season play. And now we're going to be shaking it all up, and they're going to be losing their captain for the first time. It's really hard to bet against that. I'm also with Mike. I think Lee Nguyen's probably your best midfielder option for LAFC this week. If he starts. If he doesn't start, you're scrambling. And I actually don't know that this is an LAFC position in midfield if it's not Lee Nguyen. I know that I'd probably switch in a defender and go get Sean Davis, but I know that's coming up late enough that you can't see it. So Lee Nguyen's probably going to be in an Ottaru spot or a switcheroo spot, and we'll see. And I'd probably have to roll him into somebody in that last game. So it's kind of a crapshoot there. I may actually just drop him talking about it to Sean Davis and take my chances and just forget about Nguyen for this game. The fifth guy I've got in there, because I'm actually putting 5 full in here, is Federico Higuain. They're going to be missing some key players, which means he's going to get more touches. I think they're going to have to funnel most of the attack through him. I know they like to do the wide play, but Mullins isn't quite suited for the wide play as Zardes is. I think Mullins is going to be better utilized with Higuain throwing balls into him more from the middle instead of crossing big balls in. So I think that's going to change up the Columbus tactics a little bit, and that's going to make Higuain that much better for this round.
So I have to say, I have changed my lineup listening to you guys talk right now because Gil was not on my radar at all. That's how much I don't think about New England all the time. So I did just rearrange some few things right there. But I agree with what a lot of you guys were saying. I think Royer is definitely a cookie cutter pick that a lot of teams are going to have this week. I think Higuain's a great pickup lane. I've got him on my team. I've added in Gil, which really didn't take much finagling because that's great information to point out. 9.7 is what Gil costs, so he's pretty easy to work in, I think, this week. I disagree completely with you about LAFC not having a midfield option without Lee Nguyen, because I think I'm sorry. I am so sorry, everyone. I got called out on Twitter this week for pronouncing names incorrectly, and then about our Spanish L's, and then I immediately was followed up by Love the Show, so I really appreciate that. I'm sorry. I'm just sorry. It's not a show if I don't butcher a name. But Atuesta is a 6.9 midfielder. Lee Nguyen was gone last week. He took 4 corner kicks. When Lee Nguyen is not there, he looks like the guy who's going to be on some of those set plays. And against RSL, I think that is a good shot as an LAFC option. Totally optional, though. I've got money in the bank still where I could switch to somebody else depending on what goes on. And I think that's what's important for some of these players you don't know. Go with the higher one and then see who plays, and that gives you plenty of room to be able to switch down to downgrade to the other player. I am also. Go ahead. Do you want to say something?
Oh, I was going to jump in and ask you a question there because you called me out. I get it.
I did.
I would, like I said, downgrade Lee Win to Sean Davis is kind of my thinking here, and not knowing if Lee Win's going to play. If it's not Lee Win, and I'm talking, and we'll get to it in a minute, but I do not have an LAFC defender because I have Lee Win in the lineup. So my question for you would be, is it take Lee Win and a Red Bulls defender, or take, say, a Sean Davis or somebody else and an LAFC defender? And that's my reasoning here. If I make that switch and pull Lee Win out, I'm putting an LAFC defender in his place.
I don't have a Red Bulls defender. That's what I'm doing, is because I want cheaper people. So back to that previous conversation, is I have gone budget in the back because I want to throw money.
You don't want a 5.2 from Duncan?
That would be my most expensive. I very well could, because like I said, I switched some things around, and I've got 2 defenders on the bench that I could definitely save some money there, and I could just not go with the switcheroo. But I have a switcheroo set up right now for a defender. So, but I'm not banking on them. I'm going for some of these attackers. So the last one I also have 5 midfielders, is Fabian up in Philadelphia, because I don't know, he was pretty impactful in this first game. Didn't come away with some of the points that you might want, but he was still very active, and I liked what I saw. Nobody liked what they saw in the second game, and we didn't get a third game. So this is his third game, and as we mentioned before, Mike, with some of those call-ups, that could be some interesting potential right there. But he's a bubble guy for me. He's a bubble guy for me this week, and I'll see where that goes.
And see, I didn't like Fabian this week because, I mean, he didn't really do much outside of the goal in week 1 as far as bonus points, and I don't think he was really on track in week 2 to get a whole lot of bonus points before his red card. And then when you take out Burke, it's like, who's he passing to, or who's he creating to?
He's gonna do it. He's gonna.
Yeah, so maybe he just makes it all by himself. But
yeah, he's on the bubble. Maybe I'll get Lee Win and no. But no, he's a bubble guy for me. But that's who I've got right now. Let's move on to forwards. Blayne.
I'm running a full 3 forward set this week. As we talked about earlier, Vela's got to be in there. I think he's your number 1 must own for the round. Followed up with Bradley Wright Phillips. He's got an 8 on the average from 1 game, so nothing terrible. Orlando hasn't been great on defense. You got to go with it. And then Christian Ramirez is called up. That means Diamande is your for sure starter, and that's a late game. I really think this is going to be a cookie cutter forward formation. I think everybody at this point should be able to afford these 3. If you can't afford these 3, take a look at Reid's defenders and go figure out how you can afford these 3. I mean, if you don't have Pomacall in your lineup, go put him in your lineup and make sure you get these 3 attackers. Like, I don't see anybody I really like better than these 3 for the round. If you want to take a differential, if you're afraid of Diamande and Vela being on the roster at the same time and stealing goals from each other, go look at either Kai Kamara or Diego Rubio from Colorado. I think both of them could have a very good game in this one. Rubio got his first goal with Colorado this weekend. It was definitely a poacher's goal. Kamara is going to be your better option overall. And then the other guy I really like this week, and he would be in there if it wasn't for Diamande for sure starting, and that's Teal Bunbury with Philadelphia, or with New England. Wow, I'm getting those 2 teams mixed up because they're both about equally bad at this point.
It's not the first time it's happened on the pod, too.
yeah, it's not. Anyway, New England has really no good options at forward other than Bunbury. The Caicedo is listed as a forward, or Pania, one of the 2, was higher priced than Bunbury going into the season and has completely tanked and isn't even starting at this point. In this situation, I think Bunbury's got to be there. Is their number 1 forward going forward for the season. And in this one, if it wasn't for these other guys, him playing into this FC Cincinnati game, he's just, I want to include him in my lineup. I love him as a person. I've met him a couple of times, and I really want him in my lineup this weekend. But my fantasy brain just won't allow it.
Mike.
So I have the same three. I have BWP and Vela in the starting lineup, and then I have Diamande as part of my 3-person auto that's going on right now. But predictably, if you're going to go my recommendations for a differential pick, throw in Patrick Mullins on the bench. 5.5. He hasn't been substituted on. And I mean, Philadelphia hasn't looked like the best defense at all. And I mean, I think Columbus, even though they're missing Zardes, they still do have a bunch of their attackers. They'll still have Higuain. They'll still have Pedro Santos. I think Blayne and I disagree a little bit. I think Patrick Mullins actually can kind of work in a game like this on the road, where they just need wide play to go around the midfield diamond, and Pedro Santos just whips it in for Patrick Mullins to get it kind of tap in. So, I mean, at 5.5, you put him on the bench. If he scores, you're probably getting a price increase. So, and 5.5, he's not going to really lose a whole lot if he just puts up a 2. So, if you're really hurting for budget, I think he'd be a great, interesting differential.
I think you guys we had another Reddit question that was asking us about Diamande that was asking if he would be a sneaky captain punt. I think that's too, if you dare to Diamande, I think that's a bit too risky. But I think you guys have given away Diamande as a third forward this week. I was looking at somebody different, and it sort of fell. I have Vela and Bradley Wright Phillips, like you guys have. I think that will definitely be part of the template team, those two players. The third player who I was looking at right now, and I was in a toss-up actually between Fabian and this player, and I also was super crazy and toyed around with Dwyer for a little while. 2 goals, 1 assist in his first 3 games. But the Red Bulls defense is definitely a force to be reckoned with. And that goes back to what you were talking about earlier, Blayne, about Colorado. And they've put some things together that have been interesting at times. And so I was actually looking at Rubio right now as an off the bench forward, 6.9, going against Dallas. That's missing its starting keeper. Have allowed some goals this year, so I thought that Rubio might be a sneaky pick. Diamande, though, is definitely a nice option. I would have no problems if people are thinking about that. You mentioned worrying about going with Vela and another LAFC forward. I would have no options or problems at all going with those 2 players. There's passing that happens back and forth. Vela's pretty good about doing that, and usually Ramirez or Diamande is often involved in a goal, even when Vela's not the focal point all the time for this team. So if you are thinking about Diamande and Vela, just go with it. Go with your gut, because that's not a worry, I think, as it is sometimes with other teams who you're going to go with the double forward system like that, especially since it's not like one's playing behind the other or in a 2 striker system. They're spread out, and it works. It works better. But yeah, a little bit differential. Not quite set on that. There's a couple of positions I'm still thinking about. You guys have given me some good information as well, so I hope everyone's listening. I mean, I definitely reworked my team as we were doing this conversation. So, but we'll find out. We'll find out. Captains, Mike, or did you have something to
add? The only thing I was going to say is I was surprised no one brought up Rossi, but is he hurt? No, I'm sorry, I'm looking at the wrong game. Yeah, I mean, I think Rossi's the reason. If anyone asks about Rossi, since there's not a whole lot of forwards, I mean, we talked about a bunch, but I know everyone's going to be looking at LAFC. I didn't pick Rossi because his best week so far has been week 1, which is probably dropping off of the week average. He hasn't gotten a whole lot of bonus points, and he just put up a 1. So that's why I stayed away from Rossi. I figured we'd address him since LAFC is probably going to be the big focus point. And most of their great offensive players are listed as forwards.
All right. Captains, Mike.
I think it's got to be Vela unless you're just doing a differential.
Blayne.
Yeah, it's got to be Vela this week.
And I agree. Easy decision for Vela with the form that he's been on already. All right.
Who would you do if you went differential?
Bradley Wright Phillips.
No.
I probably would go, even though I like the midfielders, I just talked about that today. I would probably go with the forward this week, just because I think Orlando's not been great, and the Vela's form make those 2 guys probably the 2 top captain picks for this round.
There's no great consistent premium midfielder available this week.
No, that's
if I had to pick a semi-premium midfielder, because there isn't really a premium midfielder at this point in this week, I'd probably go with Gill. Honestly,
I knew you would say.
He's got one of the best averages for the largest body of work, and this is a good matchup potential where if you're looking for the differential, this could be a goal and an assist or a multi-goal game for him. I don't think it has anything compared to what Vela's ceiling does, but if you're looking for that differential and trying to snag some points, that's where I'd be going.
Anybody even taking a shot at anybody from Philadelphia? I know I mentioned just Gaddis just because he was cheap in Fabian, but I mean they.
No, I mean that's one of those like awful matchups because there's too many absences on both teams. I don't want to put my captain pick on either of them because I mean I kind of feel like that's like a 1-1 draw. You know what I mean?
Fair.
Like I mean it could go wonky either way. But I mean Philadelphia if Philadelphia had Burke, I'd probably be looking more at them and Fabian. But I mean Burke has been such a crucial player for them. I mean he was creating so many chances. Now, I mean, maybe if Aronson, the kid who scored for them, plays again, you know, maybe throw that. But I mean, not for a captain pick.
Yeah, no way it's a captain pick. I think there are a couple of defender shouts in this lineup. I mean, if Gaddis starts and you don't have a bench full of transfers, you got a free auto-roo there. Even if you don't want to auto-roo him because you're just afraid of his score and you don't want to put him in there because you've got him, throw him on your bench if you're not using that money or that spot for anything else. It's a free price rise if he gets one. And if he starts, the other guy I've really kind of liked this year is Elliott. He seems to be their best bonus point producing defender that they have. And then against a club like Columbus, if they start taking on some pressure, he's going to be the guy in there. I think Wagner and Trusty have better averages, but they've gotten involved in the offensive side. Elliott's average is, I think, strictly bonus point production. So he's probably your best shout for a defender for this team, unless it's Gaddis at 4 and getting a start.
All right. It was another question. A newer player hit me up on Twitter. We are Philly. He was having some trouble posting on Reddit, and so I wanted to make sure we got his question covered in there with Philadelphia. So, yeah, guys, if you want to know how to communicate with us, hit us up on Reddit and Twitter. That I try to get a lot of these questions worked in if we can, especially on these shows with a lot of buys, and we want to get some good conversation going.
Also, go to the Discord chat. I mean, if you just ask a question, someone will answer you instantaneously. You can also at me there. I've been more active in the Discord chat this year.
I've been trying to do some more there as well. All right, guys, thank you so much for those previews and thoughts. I hope everyone found that helpful. Hit us up with more questions if you have more of them, and we'll try to maybe get a midweek show or something out there. Moving on real quick. Mike, can you look up the head-to-head with Patreon? Because I have continued to have trouble looking up our head-to-head league. I want to at least mention these guys before we move on as to who's leading the way before we get to our play.
I sure can. All right, let's see.
Apparently, the Patreon league loves you more than me.
Well, I mean, everyone loves me more than you.
Oh.
Why did it bring me to week 15 starting off? By the way, can I just complain about the fact that the My Team page was broken this week on mobile? I haven't complained about that. I messaged you guys. It was just like it was showing me like Leardom having 9. I was like, oh great. Like I thought Seattle like did poorly. And then I like, oh no, he has a 2.
I had a super meta experience watching an ad for the MLS app through the MLS app when I was watching a video. So that was
shoot. I went to the wrong league and popped it out. All right, let's see. The Patreon League. The leader of the Patreon League is FC Star Fox.
Nice. I think that's 2 leagues in a row.
Yeah, and I think in the Discord chat, apparently he is leading the Bundesliga as well. So apparently you are much smarter than us. we should have you on the show, not us.
Well, send us a message, FC Star Fox, and we'll see if we can get that worked out. Happy to have people, especially Patreon fans, supporters on the show at times. So we'll see what we can do. Just got a message on Twitter from Ashley Savage asking about hearing a female perspective on the podcast. It was so close. So close. We had a female guest lined up. That's actually something I try to do every year. I'd like to get get more female voices on the show to talk about us. Abby will be with us next month because we already have Tim lined up. But I'm trying. So thanks for asking, and don't worry, I'm doing what I can for that. We had MLS female on here last year as well. So I'm trying.
And if you know someone who's in the fantasy community and who would be willing to join us and co-host, we do this like Mondays, 9:30 Eastern time. So hit us up on any of the social media platforms we just discussed. We're definitely always looking for co-hosts because I'm sure y'all tired of listening to me and Blayne in our
yeah. And apparently Abby has been a top 75 player the past 3 seasons. So Abby, we may have you on the show. So look for a message. So
yeah, I want to follow that up with Fantasy Boss work. If you're a female writer and you want to contribute something, by all means, let us know. We don't have a female perspective on that team at the moment either, and we would love to have you out there. It's always nice to get the other perspectives in here. And final thing on this is when Beard Care Club did decide to sponsor us, we wanted to make sure beforehand that they were beardless and female friendly. This is not just a men's only club over here. So we wanted to make sure that was there. There has been some talk behind the scenes of either first half of the season, first spring season or fall season, having a specifically male and female giveaway on one of the Patreon leagues or whatever so we can get some of that going. And so come out, join the Patreon, let us know you're there. I don't know who all the female presence is in the group, but yeah, definitely reach out to us because I know there's a few female-only leagues out there on MLS Soccer as well. So they've got the chat features that they can turn on, so it's a good way to connect there. So just let us know if you're out there.
We're basically in our plug section right now. So, Mike, anything else from you?
No, that's it for right now.
All right, and you can catch everything that I do over at MLSFantasyBoss.com. Also, usually weekly on United States of Soccer on Sirius XM with Jason Davis, talking about fantasy. And don't forget to sign up for the MLSsoccer.com newsletter, the fantasy newsletter that I send out, especially if you're a new player. Try to touch on lots of questions, but would love to have the veteran players chime in as well with just anything that they want to hear about. I try to put a bit more personal touch on it. Last week I talked about when to follow value. Haven't decided on what it's going to be this week. Last week talked about form, maybe talking about value, or maybe talking about how to handle a bye week. So just some of those basic things and just insights that people want to know. Finally, check out everything over at reddit.com. You can get lots of information there as well as over at Discord. Thank you so much and good luck.